Olá, jovem! Eu sou o Gabs Ferreira e como é que você tá? Estamos aqui para mais uma live aqui no canal, de novo, entrevistando uma pessoa do Bluesky. E a primeira entrevista que eu fiz aqui foi com o Paul Frazee, que é o CTO de lá, né? Eu já coloquei a entrevista com legendas aqui no canal, tá bonitinha lá, se você quiser vai lá, dar uma olhada depois. E hoje a gente vai conversar com uma desenvolvedora, que é a Hailey. Ela trabalha com React Native lá no Bluesky. E eu queria dizer para vocês, já que eu não sou especialista em mobile, né? Eu tô longe de ser um desenvolvedor mobile, eu nunca me envolvi muito com esse lado. Então eu conto com vocês para mandar perguntas inteligentes para ela e para saber mais da parte técnica aí, beleza? Tem algumas perguntas aqui já separadas, obviamente, mas eu quero saber da galera do mobile que é o Paulinho, né, Lucas? É o Paulinho. É verdade, desculpa. Então, vou mandar perguntas aqui para ela. Eu vi que tem algumas pessoas aí que estão mandando perguntas, então fiquem à vontade para mandar, tá, gente? Eu tenho algumas perguntas aqui já na gaveta e depois eu vou começar a ler as de vocês. Mas agora eu vou mudar para o inglês, tá? Vamos agora, uma hora de mudar e fazer a nossa convidada se sentir em casa aqui hoje. So, time to switch in English. So, now I'm going to do the introduction in English again. We're going to talk today with Hailey. She's one of the developers at Bluesky. She works with React Native. And what else? Let's figure out. Let's bring her here. How are you doing, Hailey?
Hey, good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you very much for joining us here today.
Thank you for
This is
having
your
me.
first time. Yeah, this is your first time interacting with a Brazilian crowd, like all Brazilians mostly.
Yeah, for sure it is. we've had a couple like smaller waves of Brazilians that joined the app, but nothing like what we've had over the past couple weeks.
Yeah, so I want to know first of all, I don't know if you want to talk about where are you from because I asked this to Paul and he was not very much into talking about where he lives. If you're not into that, just tell us a
Yeah.
bit more about how you got into tech
Yeah,
and
sure.
how did you end up at Bluesky?
Yeah, so I'm based in the US. I'm on the West Coast. And then so if we want to talk about like how I got into tech, like I could probably go back to like 10 years old. My big thing was like Minecraft, right? And so I was really into Minecraft programming. Yeah. Every Zoomer, I guess, these days is like a Minecraft coder at some point, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, so like that just kind of progressed in doing a lot of like contract backend developer work, a lot of like .NET I was really into for a while. But then it's like slowly there was like this little transition that I started getting into with being interested in like native programming. Like there was Xamarin back in the day that was really popular with .NET. You could do some cool stuff with. Wasn't that great? And so like realizing it wasn't that great, that's how I started getting into React Native. And then that's been like kind of my like passion, I guess, since then.
I see. And you mentioned that you had did you build some sort of career with .NET development as well?
A little bit. Like there was like a lot of contract work that I did. Never like worked like professionally in a job using .NET, but it was definitely something that I was like, I really enjoyed .NET. I still really enjoy it. So.
Really? Do you prefer C# than JavaScript? Sorry, I didn't plan the question, but
you know, there's actually like I think there's a lot of stuff that I definitely prefer about C#. But like ever since I've like really started getting into React Native, JavaScript's been like the thing that I've really enjoyed. I still hate like spinning up like a Node Express server. I think that's horrible. But like for like front end like React Native work, like I just love it.
And how did you started with React Native specifically?
Yeah, so I think it was, you know, there was a point back in 2017, 2018 where like Expo was, you know, starting to get popular. It wasn't at the time that great, like there was so many limitations around it, right? But it kind of like took me down this rabbit hole of just like playing around with other native APIs and kind of learning React. Like I had never worked with React ever before until I actually started doing React Native programming. And so it's kind of like what took me down these two rabbit holes of JavaScript and it took me down this rabbit hole of kind of like understanding what's going on with the native APIs.
Yeah, and JavaScript is a big rabbit hole, right?
It's a huge rabbit hole, yeah. Like starting like I'm like trying to like rewrite stuff that I would always have written in .NET. So it was just like really fun to experience all that.
We have a really good joke here from Felipe. Why JS developers don't understand tiny font sizes? Because they can C#. Thank you, Felipe, for this. Thank you for this. So
it's so true too, because I actually like even like in my like I have like this big font. Like I look at other people, I'm like, how do you read this code over here?
And what's your story with Bluesky? I think you mentioned something in your blog about that you started doing some open source for Bluesky or something like that, and then you ended up working there.
Yeah. So back in let's see, it would have been like last October, November. Whenever I started like really actually getting into Bluesky a little bit more. And so like the first thing I did was just I was like, okay, I'm just gonna like make my own app, right? Like back then, like we hadn't really got the app to where it's at today. And there was like a lot of things that were missing. The performance wasn't that great, right? And so like I just started making my own app. But I was like thinking to myself, I was like, you know, it's open source. Like maybe I'll just like send some commits over, send some PRs, see what happens. Like maybe they'll get merged, you know, whatever. They probably won't, right? Usually that's like how things go in the open source community, right? Like you just make a PR and it just sits there. But I was surprised to see like Paul actually was really on top of the like repo. And so I started getting like these changes in. Like the first big one that I did was like the YouTube embed player. Like there was a point where like we have video now, but like there was a point where you couldn't even post like YouTube videos without having to link out of the app. And so like that was the very like the first thing that I ended up doing. There was like some other like Android bugs that had just been lingering for like months and weren't getting fixed. I was like, okay, I'll just look into it and fix them right. But anyway, so it was like 2 or 3 months into that, and then Paul reached out to me and said, hey, like if you want a job, right? Like right on GitHub, like I was just like in the GitHub PR comments, I was like, oh, well, okay. I mean, I guess I'll talk to you and see what happens. And then back in last January, I started working here.
So it is true. Contributing to open source can get you a job sometimes.
It can get you a job. Yeah, it can. It can. You got to pick the right repo.
Yeah, you got to find the right one, right? So Bruno said here, he wrote in Portuguese, but he's saying that he thought you were Brazilian. I don't know.
No. I actually saw there was, I think it was like 2 or 3 days ago. I don't know like the soccer team. I don't know anything about it. But there was like this post that blew up about like soccer. There was like an awesome goal that was made or whatever. I like reposted it in Portuguese. And there was a couple of people coming in like, holy crap, like Hailey's a fan of whatever the soccer team name is. Like, I don't know. I mean, sure, I am now, right?
So you were in Bluesky since January, you said, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. And what team are you now? Who do you work with on a daily basis?
Yeah. So the people I work with mostly are the other front-end crew. They're all active on the app. We've got Dan Abramov, obviously Paul, Eric, and Samuel. Like we're like kind of like the front-end team. Paul has transitioned a little bit away from that, but the other 4 of us have been really close knit working on that. But like the really great thing about working here is like you get to work really closely with everybody. It's like not a really big team, right? It's around like 20 people that are on the core development team. And so you get all the time opportunities to work in other parts of, the code base and of the protocol. Working a lot like the app view code, working a lot with some of the other backend stuff that's going on. I've been lucky enough to start writing some Go, right? Like I've never written Go before. I didn't think I was going to write Go, but here I am writing Go, right?
How's it going?
It's it's going all right. Actually, weird, it's going all right. Yeah. It's definitely a little weird, but
Cool. And you mentioned Dan Abramov.
Yeah,
Actually, I haven't shared he yet, but for you guys that are watching us here right now, I'm going to interview Dan as well next week. But Dan is in Japan, so his time zone is a bit weird right now, and we're gonna have to do his interview by the morning. So it's gonna be 8 a.m. in the morning for Brazilians and 8 p.m. in the night for him. So 8 a.m. in the morning next Thursday, I expect you all here. And Hailey, describe to us a little bit about how is your work like. What does a typical day as a mobile developer at Blue Sky looks like as a developer right now? Because you're not mobile,
yeah,
you're doing even Go. Like you're a developer, just a developer, right?
yeah. So it's just, it really just depends on what's going on, right? Like, um, the past 6 or so weeks have like really been focused like heavily on getting video shipped out.
Mm.
Once Brazil, once Brazil came over, right? Like the very like that was the big thing. Everyone wanted video, so we were like, okay, let's get this done really quick. So there
Mm.
was a lot of work that got put into that. Like for
Mm.
me personally, that sort of meant writing like a lot more Kotlin, a lot more Swift, right?
Mm.
Um, which is kind of like how I've been spending like a lot more of my time recently. I have sort of landed in this role of like maintaining a bunch of like these little native components that we're using with React Native. And also like I'm really not a web developer, right? So I don't like someone else can go and write the web player and stuff. But yeah, like I've been really focused on getting this video workout recently. But there's other times where like you run into some weird bug and it is some problem with the API response, right? And so like, yeah, like you can sometimes just be like, you can ping someone and be like, hey, like this is messed up. Like, can you help me, or can we fix this? And it's like, yeah, we'll get to that like in like, 8 months, like down the backlog, right? So like having that like comfortability to like go and hop into another part of the code base is like super useful. And so a lot of time gets spent doing that too, like just going and adding the quote post listings. Like before Brazil joined, like there wasn't even like a list of quote posts. Like there was just a number of quotes. You couldn't see the post, you couldn't see any of that, right? But now you can. And so that was one of the big changes that front end mostly worked on. That was still some of that API backend code. So.
So, folks, there in the chat right now, I see that you're already sending a good amount of questions. I'm going to read them in a few minutes.
Yep.
Okay, keep coming, keep sending them. And Hailey, about the video feature, I'm gonna be completely honest with you. I have no idea how this kind of feature works for a big mass social media that Blue Sky is becoming. And to me, it's like, okay, so when you are going to post a video, you have to upload it and then download it for the person that's gonna see. But what
Yeah.
else? Like, what are the
Yeah.
things? What's the most complex part of this video feature, if you can name one?
Yeah. So I think for us, like on the front end side of things, right, the really hard part about getting this right has been like, because I don't think I've gotten this completely right yet, but there's not like a library that just lets you like make scrolling feeds of videos, right? Like Expo, which is what we're using on top of React Native, they have like their own video library, but it's not really
Mm.
suited for like the needs that we have. And so the thing that we spent a lot of time on was like making sure like that experience in the app is as good as it can be. Um,
Mm.
and so that was like surprisingly a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. Like dealing with, once you scroll away from the video, is it going to pause? Is it going to, mute
Mm.
itself? Like all these like
Mm.
little like states are like super hard to get nailed down really nicely. And then,
Mm.
especially like React Native is great because you're developing for multiple platforms. Like we're developing for 3 platforms, right? With one code base that's like mostly shared between platforms. But like there was a lot of problems on Android that like only cropped up on certain devices, like Motorola Android phones were like having like these weird problems that,
Yeah.
that like the couple of Android phones that I have, like I'm not seeing it on, like I can't reproduce this, right? And so like that has just been the kind of like biggest difficulty I think for us on the front end
Mm.
side.
Mm.
On the back end side, like I think it was just you know, having to really rethink plans for how things go whenever we onboard 5 million new users, right? Like we were planning on shipping video with the current user base we had, and then Brazil came over to Bluesky, and so like making those like quick adjustments, figuring out like how we're going to roll that out, right? Like we did that little kind of stage rollout where we were slowly saying like, okay, like are we good? Are we good? Okay, we're good, right? So like just like planning all those little things out is really difficult. It's definitely not just like, oh, I'm gonna plug in this endpoint and we'll just upload the video and it'll just sit there and everything's good, right? It's definitely a lot more complexity goes into it that you totally don't see on the within the app at all.
Yeah, it looks smooth, right? It looks like, okay, it's just video here. There's like a lot of things that we're not seeing. Yeah. And regarding the Brazilian mass migration from Next to Bluesky that caused this movement that you're having to deal with now. You mentioned before we started the interview that you were one of the first that realized that this was happening. How was that?
Yeah, I was. I don't remember where I saw it. I think it must have been on Bluesky. I don't really. I don't go over. You know, I don't really use Twitter. But there was some article or some post about like some court order that was coming down about X getting banned or suspended in Brazil, right? And so I just kind of like said like, hey, like it sounds like something might be happening like in like 24 hours in Brazil. I don't know. We've heard this before. Like other, you know, we've had a couple of like, you know, big bumps from like maybe we're gonna get banned in this country or whatever, right? So like we were kind of skeptical and it sounded like a little too crazy to really happen, but lo and behold, like 32 hours, I guess, right after we first talked about it, like people just started joining the app. Like the big bump that we first saw actually came from President Lula actually like making a post on Twitter with his Bluesky account, right? And as soon as that happened, like, okay, this is real, right? Like this is actually going to happen. But yeah, like the first thing we heard about it was just like kind of just watching the news and just seeing what other people were talking about.
And how did this impact your job directly, if it did somehow? I don't know if it did, but how it did.
For me personally, like I'm not really responsible for any of the back end stuff. Like it's always like being a front end developer is great in these scenarios, right? Like I can sit back, like good, you guys are doing great. Like I'll buy you some drinks after we get through this. I'm gonna sit back here though. But no, like I think what really ended up happening was like we said, okay, what are like these people looking for? And we, you know, obviously saw like a big thing that we were missing, that was video, right? And we already were pretty close to getting shipped. And we just kind of, like you said, you know what, let's just go really heads down and work through this and get this shipped as soon as possible. Like, I don't know when we would have ended up shipping it had it not been for Brazil. It would have been like relatively around the same time, but we definitely said, you know what, let's focus on this. Let's get this shipped a little bit quicker. And I'm happy it did. Like it paid off because we got to have the big the chair moment a couple days ago, right? We wouldn't have had the chair moment had it not been for us getting video shipped out. So definitely was just like that increased speed that we wanted to get stuff done.
I see. And about React Native and your work with it, you and team. How do you take advantage of the native libraries from iOS and Kotlin working with React Native? As I mentioned to you, I'm far from being a mobile expert, so I'm curious about how you do that.
Yeah, so I would say probably like 9 times out of 10, whenever you're making like a React Native app, like you can pretty much just write JavaScript. Like there's going to be like other libraries out there already that you can just kind of drop in. Like someone has gone and done the native work for you. Like that's especially true with stuff like Reanimated. Like Reanimated, the animation API for React Native is like very well done. And so it makes like writing these like animations that you would usually have to go and write some Swift. And then if you're also targeting Android, like you got to maintain these 2 code bases just for animation code. But with React Native, like you get this opportunity to kind of just write all of that one time in JavaScript, which is really cool. And so like 9 times out of 10, like that's just how it goes. Like it's super easy. Most people can just get by with just JavaScript. But you start getting into these situations with like, I mean, the video is a great example where you really need some like fine grain control that's like super performant that you don't really have access to, right? Just from the JavaScript, like the existing libraries that are out there. And so it's really easy now, especially like with Expo. Expo's been doing some great work on this. But you can just spin up like a little tiny module of Swift, and it might be like 300 lines of code, but you can write this Swift code, and then you can interact with it right in JavaScript. You just like kind of add it into the app, and then in JavaScript, you're actually able to access that Swift code. You can have the Swift run something. You can have it have like a custom Swift UI view. And then the same thing on Android. Like you want to have like a Jetpack UI, you can do that, and you can get it right into your app. So it's really cool that you can like write these like as you need modules rather than having to write the entire thing twice from scratch in 2 different languages. You kind of just get to like share 90% of the stuff. That 10%, it's really easy to just spin up little modules of native code.
And talking about sharing code, the choice of React Native as well was for somehow to share code with the web app in React, probably.
Yeah. So, like obviously, like that decision was made before I started working here. But like just in general, I think that like this is the first time I've ever actually worked on a project that's doing React Native Web along with React Native. Usually, it's just like, okay, like this React Native is gonna be super awesome because I can have an Android and an iOS app together, right? But now we're actually shipping a web app too with it. And so it really is allowing us to have, again, like we have 4 developers like working on this thing. Like there's like a lot of like community contributions that come through, but like the core team is only 4 people. Whereas if we were not doing that, like we might have Dan, we might have 2 other people working on a React app, and we might have a couple other people working on a Swift app, right? And so it really just lets you kind of reduce the complexity, reduce, the amount of people that you need to ship something. And honestly, like I think it really helps with like some design stuff. Like I definitely think like there's like design stuff that we need to work on, we need to get better, like or improve on. But like it makes things so much easier to just say, you know what, I'm gonna make this button look this way. I can write it one time and it's gonna look the same mostly on each platform. So I think it's just like kind of an obvious choice, especially for us with a small team size. It's an obvious choice.
Yeah, it makes sense. Make a lot of sense.
Yep.
We do have a question here. It's in Portuguese from Glaucia, but she's asking if maybe it's a prerequisite for people to work at Bluesky to be so cute and smiley.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, but we got one here from Camilo. Thank you for the 10, Camilo. You're already running a blog on ATProto, which is great. Do you think it could evolve into something like the fediverse, where platforms like PeerTube and Lemmy interconnect, or that is still far off?
Yeah, so there's actually, the blog that I have is actually using Whitewind, like the lexicon structure that Whitewind is using.
Yeah.
And Whitewind is like this blog website where you can use your Bluesky account. You can go right over to Whitewind and you can write blog posts, and it has using your identity. So like all these posts are still tied to you, the same handle. It all like lives in the same storage PDS that is yours. And so like these kind of like integrations like are already actually getting developed. There's quite a few different projects now that are like ongoing. It's super exciting to see like the community really starting to like figure out ATProto and start making things. Like I'll be honest, like I'm definitely not like protocol brained, right? So like a lot of these things are like a little over my head. But like I'm really excited to start seeing like other apps actually existing where I can like go and sign in with my Bluesky account and I can make a blog post. And the cool thing is like that blog post that I have on my website is visible on Whitewind too. But I just decided that I'm going to go and make like my own little UI for my own website, but you can see them on both. So like I might write the blog post on Whitewind, their website, but then it shows up on my website, kind of styled however I want it.
Interesting. And Richard is asking, what's your favorite Brazilian meme? The best you've ever seen? Do you remember?
Okay, so honestly, I have to say, like, the shit posting game has been really on point. Again, like that chair situation
The chair.
was fantastic. Like
Yeah.
seeing how quickly like all these different memes started like coming together. Like there was the one where like it was the like we'll be right back. Like it paused right on like getting the chair smashed over his head. Right. It's been like fantastic and like hilarious watching that. Watching all that go on. It's so great.
But do you know the context about the chair thing?
I understand a little bit. Like I know like a debate or something that was going on, like a political debate or something. That's all I really know. Yeah.
It's a debate for the mayor position in São Paulo, and that guy that was hit by the chair, he's like, how can I put this? He used to be he kind of is a coach that sells. I don't know what he sells, to be honest, but he sells courses about how to be awesome and this kind of thing. And he's like,
Okay.
I don't know. It's like, let's not spend much time into this, but he's an asshole basically, and he's a kind of a far right guy. This is his first election, and he's like very provocative, and he's always saying. At the time, had he got a chair, the hit by the chair, he was saying that the other guy was not man enough to face him, and he was a coward. And then the other guy got mad and
Okay.
to the chair. Yeah, it's hard to explain without getting into much details. But anyway,
yeah.
Lai's arrived here, and she said she's a bit late, but she would like to know what tech do you use daily on Bluesky, if it's only React Native or if it's something else.
Yeah, so for the front end, it's again like so the web app is just it's a React app. So like if you can write React, like you can make our web app really easy. If you know React. And then like on for the native app, it's React Native. But on top of React Native, we're using Expo. And so Expo has been doing like a lot of great work in like maintaining the React Native ecosystem a little bit. Like maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, it was a lot more difficult, right? Because you had these like community libraries that were getting maintained, but what happens is someone makes an app, they make this library for their app, the app, like they quit, working on the app or whatever, and so the library dies out. And there was this really big problem in the React Native community where these libraries were just not working, and like people were depending on them, and like no one's maintaining them. And so Expo has been doing like a lot of really great work maintaining like a huge set of libraries that you can like spin up a React Native app like super easily. Like it's like a huge part of the reason why we're able to ship like so much of this stuff out so like easily is because of Expo. So yeah, it's a React Native Expo, and then just React for the website.
Cool. We have one here from Felipe. Thank you for the 10, Felipe. How is the Bluesky test culture for front-end apps? Could you talk a little bit about the test stack, how features are tested, the unit integrated, TDD, or not TDD?
Testing? Like, what are we talking about here? Testing. So we try to maintain. We do try to maintain unit tests for like a lot of like the UI features. The important stuff, like we really try to like the sign up flow and the posting flow and the list creation flow, right? Like we do have unit tests for those that before we release, we run those unit tests. Those are using Maestro, I think, right now. But I will say, like, it has been, for one, it's been a little difficult, right? Just to keep that maintained. Again, like we only have 4 people. We only have so much attention span, right? But also like the big thing that's really paid off for us is having like a really strong, like internal CI environment where like we merge them into main, and as soon as we merge it into main, like it's on our devices. And whenever I first started working here, like that wasn't what was going on at all. Like there was, we were shipping something and like for the first time that like we're using it internally is like 5 hours before it goes live for users, right? And so there was a lot of stuff that we weren't catching. But now that we have like these over-the-air updates working really well, using Expo as well, another great thing that Expo provides, we've just been able to we've been able to personally like use the app and see the bugs like way before they actually go and they hit production. And so honestly, like our test plan is merge it into main. I mean, obviously test the PR, right? Like we obviously test somewhat, right? Of course. But no, like you merge into main, it's going to sit in main for like a week before it gets released. And then a lot of us are like really big on using the app. Like, so we run into a lot of the stuff like way before production sees it. Like Sam and I the whole time were actually like posting videos for like 2 weeks ahead of time. As like we could see them. I know like on the outside, like you couldn't see them, but like we were just testing right in production. And there was videos like all over our timelines. And so yeah, like that's just kind of how we go about testing.
Okay, so I opened this, I shared my screen here because you just mentioned that you mentioned something about CI/CD, and I remember that you wrote this post. I don't know if it's too much to ask you to explain quickly how you're doing this in a way without. I'm gonna send the link to this blog post if, for people to read later, but you can explain a bit about this for us. How are you implementing CI/CD with almost zero cost?
Yeah. So we have, or with React Native, you end up with a JavaScript bundle that the app actually runs, right? And so again, like 80-90% of the code is all JavaScript that like we're writing. And so all that JavaScript code, you can actually reload like hot. Like if we update the bundle, then the app can load that bundle instead of the one that it's shipped with. There's like a lot of exceptions to what you can ship. Like you cannot add like new native code. So like if there's like a problem with like the video player at like the native level, we cannot OTA a fix out for that. Like we do have to go back through App Store review. But for like little hot fixes and bug fixes, like we're able to get those out really quickly because it's just a JavaScript bundle that we have to update.
Yeah.
And so like internally what we do is every single time that we merge something into main, we're actually just sending out to like the test flight and like the internal Android builds, these like new OTA updates. And so as soon as it merges into main, like 3 or 4 minutes later, it's on devices. So like if I like add like some crash bug, like someone is going to ping me in Slack, like, hey, the app just crashed, right? And I can go right in and look at it. Then of course, the cool thing is that we're actually able to do that in production too. We don't like use it as often. Like it's really a safety net. If we like ship out something that's like really buggy, or like in the case of Brazil, it actually really paid off because we were able to like quickly roll out like translations and localizations for Portuguese that like were really outdated because there wasn't really anyone maintaining them. Like those are all community maintained. And we were able to like roll those out like the day after like the Brazilian wave really first started hitting. Wow. And so like that's like this like feature that you kind of get using React Native. It's like not common. Like most apps can't do that, right? You do have to like always like even if it's like a little UI tweak, like you got to like go through app review and all that stuff. But with React Native, you actually get this opportunity to kind of just ship out hot changes like that and get them out really quickly. And so that's like paid like dividends for us. Like we've definitely shipped a couple of things where we're like, oh, that's not that great, right? And we were able to quickly just get that fixed. And yeah, so like we run like the servers for that internally, or like the backend server for that internally, and they just get delivered CDN.
Interesting. So if you want to know more in detail and read Hailey's blog post, I just shared here on the chat, okay? And Felipe, the one that asked about tests, he said that he asked that because it's harder to ship features for social networks since rollback is not a common alternative for front end. Yeah, because there's a lot more things involved, right? Like cache and yeah. I never thought about that, to be honest.
Yeah, that's like sometimes I'm almost envious, like watching backend. Like backend can ship something and it like breaks, and it's like, oh, let me just roll that back real quick. Like the site, okay, like the site was down for like a minute and a half. Like great. Actually, and this is my story, I guess. We had a React Native upgrade I want to say like halfway through the year, like maybe this was like back in June or July. So we actually upgraded React Native, we upgraded Expo. And there was like this bug upstream. It wasn't even like, it wasn't our bug, but there was a bug upstream where on Android, if you tried to open the app, like you would download it in Google Play. If you opened the app through Google Play, it would open just fine. But for like 15% of users, like if they tried to open the app like from their home screen, it would just crash immediately. So like we have this like crash bug in production that's like crashing for 15% of users. Like you said, like there's no rollback. Like we can't tell Google like, hey, like we can't. And so I think we ended up like for almost 2 days, I think, because like we had to find the bug and thankfully like we were able to work closely with the Expo team to like find out, hey, like what is this bug? And we were able to get that fixed. But yeah, we had to go right back to Google Play store review. And of course, like the one time where we're really trying to do this quickly, like it's a little bit slower, right? And so like there's definitely like a lot of fear that goes into that. So, and like even with just a web app, like a web app, yeah, you can roll something back pretty easily on web. Like we do sometimes like roll out little things to web, like because we're like, okay, if this is like broken, we can just revert it. Yeah, we don't get that luxury with with native, right? So it's definitely a little scary. It's for sure a little scary. But like, you know, we just kind of watch Sentry. We can see like whenever crashes are coming through and stuff and clean them up, usually pretty quickly.
Yeah. So Camilo is asking if you do foresee any limitations with this setup as application scales even further, perhaps to the next 10 million more users. I'm not sure if what setup he's talking about is the test, maybe testing setup, probably, or the CI/CD.
Yeah, for us on like front end side, like I don't think there's any limitations there. Like the service we run for this, like is all ran by us. So like it's just like CDN. Like as long as the CDN is available to download a JavaScript bundle, like for the CI/CD for the front end, like we're fine. There's like I don't really do backend, so I can't really talk about like scalability, like what's going on there. But I do know that we're very aware of that whole situation. Like we're always ready to scale up when we need. I mean, obviously, like the backend team did a great job, like onboarding 5 million users, right? And like the course of 72 hours, 96 hours, whatever it was. So like that was like a really big success for us, and so we're definitely ready to. We hit another 2 million users, like we're ready. We're ready to go.
Yeah. So Lucas, thank you for the 10, man. With our move to Bluesky, we brought along a ton of meme, gossip, and cute animal pages. Can you share one positive and one negative aspect of this increase in users from a mobile dev perspective?
Yeah, so I think honestly for me, it's mostly just all been positive, right? Because not only like do you get to see, I mean, you start like I use the app all the time. Like I'm always on this app, whether I'm working because I'm working on the app, or if I'm not working, I'm just like using the app. And so you like kind of like get to know like a lot of people. And so it's actually interesting, like seeing all these new people you've never seen before start coming in and really enjoying your app and talking about your app and really excited about what you're shipping, right? And there's like this, it's like actually just super awesome to get to ship something like video to like millions of users, right? And so
yeah,
honestly, I think that's
working,
the best
right?
part. Like, and see it working, yeah. Like there was bugs. Like, don't get me wrong. Like there was bugs on both back end and front end, but like getting like through those things quickly. People are super supportive. I will say like the Brazilians have like all been super supportive of the dev team, right? Like Paul is Pi, right? Like
Paulinho.
yeah. But like they've just been like or all of you guys have been so supportive of the work we're doing and super understanding of like, things are going to take a little bit of time to get worked out. But no, like honestly, like it's just all been great. It does raise like some bugs, right? Like we did find like, okay, there's a little bug with like language detection. And so like a lot of Portuguese posts are bleeding into the English clusters and, they don't necessarily like that. I mean, of course, like I don't want to see like 80% Portuguese posts. I can't read Portuguese, right? But so it kind of gives you this chance to test out the app in ways you've never done it before. And so like it's beneficial for that reason too. But mostly it's just because it's like a joy seeing so many people using the product that we're working on.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine. And we have another one from Lais here. Are there any experimentation platform behind the rollout of new features, like a feature that turn on off a feature for a group of users, a toggle feature probably, right? Or the rollout is 100% for all the database users?
So it really depends on what the feature is. In the case of video, like we definitely had like a feature gate that was like we released video, like video was in the app for 4 weeks, about maybe 3 weeks, but it was just behind a feature flag that only the internal team was actually enabled on, right? And then as we started pulling the lever a little bit to release it into the public, like we kind of like toggled, okay, like let's go 3%. Okay, we look good there. Let's go 8%. Okay, let's go 15, 25, 50, right? And so it gave us like this like really nice control over like scaling issues that we had. Like there was definitely a point where we were like, okay, like we're at 60%. Let's take a pause. I think we paused overnight. Like everyone had been working really hard all day long. Brazil actually went to sleep too, right? So you're like, you guys are with us on time zone for the most part. So like, you know, it was really easy to just kind of like, okay, let's take a break. We'll come back to this tomorrow. Fix up some bugs and stuff. And so it really gave us like this easy or this like awesome control lever for those features.
Yeah. Gabriel was asking if JavaScript was your first language. It was. It was Minecraft is Java.
Java, yeah. It was like Java and like .NET were like the two languages that I primarily used in the past.
So you started with
JavaScript was
Java.
not something that I didn't touch JavaScript until like 2017 when I just started kind of getting into React Native. Like I've never really maintained like a React web app on its own. So definitely has been like a little bit of a new experience working on some of the web stuff here.
We have some people here saying that you gave us a home.
We're glad to have you. Yeah, pie.
Francisco is excited to see you here. Okay, so I'm curious about how it is to start writing software at 10 and with Java. Like, how did you learn? I mean, there are probably some you were motivated about gaming, right? But
yeah.
How was that?
So it's like I don't know, as a kid, and there's like you just want to start experimenting with stuff, playing with stuff. And Minecraft, like interestingly, like gave you like I think my generation like so much ability there, right? Like it was something that really I'm sure existed previously. Like there was like scripting for like source games and stuff like that. But like with Minecraft, like it was like this phenomenon where a lot of people were doing it. I've met so many people my age who were just into Minecraft and were just like, yeah, I'm just gonna like hack on a Minecraft plugin because like I'm bored, I have nothing better to do, and my friends can come in and like I can share the work that I'm working on with my friends and stuff like that, right? And so I don't know. I think it was just like something that like I started and really quickly fell in love with because I could like make things and really see them and use them. And that was like just a process that I started falling in love with at a really young age.
It was something natural to you, as it looks like.
Yeah, it was like something that I was just like, okay, this is like all I want to do, like with my whole life. Of course, not great, right? But like at 10 years old, I was like, I could do this like every day of my life, and it would be so great.
Yeah, I envy you because I never found something that I mean, I like what I do. I like my job, but it's a job, you know. But is it
For sure.
a hobby for you? Like, do you spend your free time coding?
I think actually working on Bluesky has been a little bit of a change of pace there for sure because I am feeling that like hobby again a little bit with it, right? Just because like this like the like kind of the decentralized space is something that I've always been really interested in. Not super like part of, but like really interested in. And then like, again, working on an app where you are shipping to millions of users obviously is really cool. But it's like actually something that's like really has been like meaningful for me, where like I'm using it. Like this is like really something that I'm enjoying, just as a user. And so like having like that connection to it is, I think, really key. Working on something that you don't want to like use yourself is like, a little bit more pointless. Like that's whenever, to me, it starts becoming a job. But working on Bluesky has been something where it's like, yeah, it is kind of a hobby. Like I'll be at home like on a weekend, like, yeah, I want to hack on something, and then it just turns into a Bluesky project, right? Because it's like, hey, like they are like kind of like going hand in hand a little bit for me right now.
Cool. And when I shared on socials that I was going to interview you, there were some people asking about if you had job openings, and if somehow if people are interested in working in Blue Sky, what should they do? Where should they go? And well, you got your job like in a way that you were not expecting, so maybe people could start hacking on some open source as well, and maybe find their way, right?
Yeah, for sure. There's also like we actually are still actively hiring for a TypeScript backend role. So if there's any like backend TypeScript role people out there who are like super interested in this space, like definitely send over an application. Like we're totally interested in hearing from you.
And do you have like a specific interviewing and test process for people that want to work there? I don't know if you can talk about this, but just curious if you have a specific process for hiring.
Yeah, like honestly, for me personally, like I'm just not really that familiar with it. I don't do any of that stuff. So
Yeah, yeah. But I imagine that at least for now, since you're not like a big corp, you're probably not that bureaucratic in terms of processes, right?
yeah, I would say a little bit of that for sure.
Yeah.
And it's like just in general, like working with this team of people has just been great because we are kind of like friends, right? It is like that kind of small vibe still, which has been really, really fun to work at.
Mm, okay, I can imagine. And so, Hailey, I would like to thank you very much for your time. I think
Of
it's
course.
been like since I joined Blue Sky, I'm feeling that a sense of community that I haven't felt since I don't know, a long ago. Because well, I love Twitter. Being completely honest with you, like it was my favorite social media, but it's been a while that it was not the same anymore for
Yeah, yeah,
many reasons that I'm it's not worth getting
yeah,
into here. But
yep.
anyway, I think you probably know what I'm talking about, right? And in Blue Sky, I'm feeling that I don't know, we can build communities again. I'm not if that's exactly what I feel, but that's kind of a general feeling that I have. Do you feel that too?
Yeah, for sure. And it's like it's definitely funny. Like that's why I kind of ended up falling in love with Blue Sky a little bit whenever I like first started using it, and why I
Yeah.
said like, you know what, I'm gonna start like working on this thing, like making contributions and stuff, was because like as soon as I joined, like there was that community building vibe. Um,
Mm.
Much less so than any other social media app I'd ever used. Like I had been on Twitter before. I've been on like other social media sites, and like I've never been on like a platform where like that community building, people were so generous and kind and wanting to get to know you and stuff. And so yeah, it's just been I definitely get that same vibe, and like we're definitely really hoping that going forward we can continue building on that and we can continue making that experience better.
Yeah, 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 and I believe you will.
Yeah, and
And
I'm so happy to
so
hear that you and all the other Brazilians over there are feeling that way, because that's like such a great feeling knowing that what we're building is actually
yeah,
giving you guys that sense of community.
yeah, and I can see that you're really proud of it. So congratulations for your work, for working on something that means something to you. And so far, it looks like it's going to be a success. I mean, it already is. At least for us, it is, and for other 10 million Brazilians that I don't know how many
Sure, sure.
Brazilians there are there right now. And so, thank you very much, Hailey, for your time
Thank you
again.
so much.
And I'm gonna spend a few more minutes here talking to my Brazilian audience, but I'm gonna let you go. And I'll see you on Blue Sky.
All right, I'll see you. Take care.
Have a great day. Bye bye.
You too.
E aí, galerinha? Tudo bem com vocês? Como é que vocês estão? Como é que vocês estão? Tudo certo? Como é que foi a entrevista? Curtiram? Eu tô cansado, hein, gente? Tô bem cansado. Nossa. Ontem voltei de viagem. Não sei se todo mundo viu aí. Acho que não, né? Todo mundo viu, né? Não é todo mundo que segue minha vida. Mas eu tava na Lituânia e eu fui voltar ontem nossa, fui apertado naqueles assentos do meio, sabe? Tem 4 no meio. Aí eu fui bem no meio de 2 caras, um gordinho, que era o Leandro, que tava comigo, meu amigo, e um outro folgado que dormia de perna reganhada. E foi difícil ficar 11 horas sentado com a cadeira toda troncha lá. Meu Deus do céu. Obrigado aí todo mundo que tá elogiando. Tô deitando no inglês. Valeu, bom demais. Muito bom. Valeu, Francisco. Valeu, Camilo. Valeu, Glaucia que tá aí. Você percebeu que eu tô cansado? Valeu, Ana. Então, ó, além do Paul e da Hailey, semana que vem eu vou entrevistar o Dan Abramov, tá? Só que eu não vou conseguir fazer à noite, porque o Dan tá no Japão. Então a gente tem que fazer de manhã. Vai ser 8 horas da manhã, na quinta-feira que vem. Espero vocês todos aí. Pô, Marcos, você perdeu meus stories, cara. Que pena. Voltei ontem, fiquei uma semana lá. Fiquei uma semana lá. Acabou de chegar na Lituânia e já engatou na entrevista. Tô cansadão. Eu confesso que algumas horas antes da entrevista hoje eu falei, caramba, por que eu fui marcar essa entrevista hoje? Deveria ter marcado semana que vem. Deveria ter pulado. Mas tudo bem, foi legal. Trazer alguém do back-end, Lucas, é uma boa, hein? Vou tentar descobrir com o pessoal lá quem que é legal do back-end para trazer, porque o Dan acho que ele deve trabalhar mais com front também, né? Ou será que ele tá no back hoje? Não sei, eu sei que ele é o cara do React, né? Vai ser boa, boa, é top, o mago do React, esse mesmo, Francisco, esse mesmo, Dan Abramov, o cara do React. Então vamos acordar cedo semana que vem, hein, galera? Cedo na quinta-feira que vem, já marca na agenda aí para não ter nenhum compromisso. Quinta-feira que vem, 8 horas da manhã. Mais uma vez, vai ser 8 horas da manhã porque tá no Japão, aí vai ser 8 horas da noite para ele, né? Eu queria fazer à noite, mas ele falou que ele levanta tarde, para ele não é uma boa o horário. Eu queria fazer mais esse horário, manter esse horário cedo aqui, que cedo, tô louco. Semana que vem. Manter o horário à noite, porque a noite é um horário que acaba sendo legal para muita gente, né? Você já tá na cama, ou você já parou de trabalhar, você já tá com no tempo livre ali, dá para você sentar de boa e assistir, do que no meio do dia. Só que não tem muito o que fazer, né? Se o cara acordar às 11 horas da manhã, eu não vou encher o saco dele para ele acordar cedo e vir para cá. O Moses é legal trazer porque ele trabalha no app e também tem um app próprio freemium pago. Não conheço ele, deixa eu seguir ele aqui no Bluesky. Esse deve ser o user dele no Bluesky, né, cara? Você mandou aí, deixa eu ver. Mose 1. E falando de Lituânia, gente, muito legal a Lituânia, viu? Eu lancei um episódio de podcast hoje, inclusive, com um brasileiro que eu conversei lá. Eu vou mandar o link para vocês aqui. Eu gravei uma entrevista com um brasileiro lá no domingo, já consegui editar para lançar hoje, quer dizer, eu não editei, né? Foi meu editor, tem um editor agora. Ele é de Pernambuco, joguei o link aí no chat. Ele é de Recife e ele trabalha com direito. Ele não é de tech, mas ele tem uma história legal. Ele conta como que ele foi parar lá na Lituânia, ele namora uma lituana, né, já faz um tempinho. Ele falou um pouco sobre estilo de vida, o que tem de legal lá, um pouco sobre grana, sobre impostos, sobre, né, como que é morar num lugar tão distante do Brasil e tão diferente culturalmente ainda, né, do Nordeste do Brasil, né, Recife e tal. Foi bem legal, um papo bem interessante. Angélica, a live fica gravada, sim, e eu vou ver se eu consigo fazer legendas também, tá? Para colocar depois. A única coisa é que Fica meio caro para legendar, meio salgadinha a legenda. A do Paul ficou 400 e poucos reais. Mas valeu a pena, porque eu acho que foi uma entrevista que é legal a gente traduzir e colocar a legenda bonitinha, né? Já tem alguns apps que fazem legenda, mas não é a mesma coisa do que pagar uma pessoa para fazer. Então eu prefiro pagar um profissional para fazer isso, uma pessoa que trabalha com transcrição mesmo, né? Com legendagem e tal. É, mas é isso. Eu vou ver se para essa eu consigo fazer a mesma coisa, dar uma editada na entrevista e colocar a legenda. Colocar uma legenda em inglês para quem quiser assistir depois. A do Paul tá aqui no canal, Angélica. É só ir lá em vídeos que você vai achar facinho, tá? Mas eu vou jogar aqui no chat também, só para te ajudar. Deixa eu pegar aqui. Só um minutinho. Entrevista com o Paul. Aqui. Tá com legenda, tá? A legenda não é a legenda que fica direto no vídeo, é a legenda que você tem que ativar no YouTube aqui, tá? Vou colocar aqui. Entrevista com o Paul. Então você ativa a legenda embaixo e aí aparece ela bonitinha aí para vocês, tá? Pessoal, o Paulinho Cláudio, desculpa. Paulinho. Galera, eu vou descansar. Eu gostaria de agradecer a participação, a presença de vocês todos aqui hoje nessa magnífica quinta-feira. Amanhã é sexta, hein? Amanhã é sexta, dia de fazer deploy em produção e todas aquelas zoeiras que a galera fala, né? Eu espero que vocês tenham gostado da live de hoje. A Hailey é muito legal. E a gente se vê semana que vem, aqui, de novo, beleza? Aqui, às 8 da manhã, hein? E a gente se vê lá no Bluesky e nas outras redes. Você ficou até o fim? Não esquece de deixar aquele like aí no vídeo, se inscrever no canal, sabe como que é, né? Aquilo tudo que você tem que fazer quando você apoia seus criadores de conteúdo. Obrigado, Gláucia, Guilherme Rosa, Ana Beatriz, Marcos, Angélica Laís, o Camilo que participou bastante. Galera, muito, muito, muito obrigado aí pela participação, tá? Obrigado por apoiar meu trabalho. E eu vejo vocês em breve. Boa sexta para todos, bom fim de semana.